What inspired Margaret Thatcher to pursue a career in politics, and how did she rise to become the first female Prime Minister of the United Kingdom? Margaret Thatcher's interest in politics can be traced back to her childhood, as her father was a local politician and she grew up attending Conservative Party meetings with him. After studying chemistry at Oxford University, she worked as a research chemist before studying law and eventually becoming a barrister. Thatcher was first elected to Parliament in 1959 as the Conservative MP for Finchley, and quickly rose through the ranks of the party, serving in a number of junior ministerial positions before being appointed as Education Secretary in 1970. She became the first woman to hold that office, and was known for her efforts to increase school standards and introduce more choice and competition in the education system. In 1975, Thatcher was elected leader of the Conservative Party, defeating Edward Heath in a leadership contest. She continued to build her profile and popularity within the party, and in 1979, she led the Conservatives to victory in the general election, becoming the first female Prime Minister of the UK. Thatcher's rise to power was notable not only for her gender, but also for her political philosophy and leadership style, which were marked by a commitment to free market economics, individual liberty, and a strong defence policy. Her leadership and policies would go on to reshape British politics and society in significant ways. How did Thatcher's economic policies, such as privatisation and deregulation, impact the British economy and society? Margaret Thatcher's economic policies, which emphasised free market principles and reduced government intervention, had a significant impact on the British economy and society. Here are some of the key ways in which her policies affected the country. 1. Privatisation. One of Thatcher's most significant economic policies was the privatisation of state-owned industries, such as British Telecom, British Gas, and British Airways. This involved selling off these companies to private investors, which was intended to increase competition, improve efficiency, and reduce the role of the state in the economy. While there was some controversy surrounding the policy, many of the privatized industries did become more efficient and profitable after being sold off. 2. Deregulation. Thatcher also sought to reduce regulation in a number of industries, such as banking and finance. This was intended to encourage entrepreneurship and competition, and to reduce the burden on businesses. Some critics argue that deregulation contributed to the financial crisis of 2008. But others argue that it helped to stimulate economic growth and innovation. 3. Trade union reform. Thatcher introduced a number of reforms to trade unions, which had a significant impact on the relationship between workers and employers. The reforms made it more difficult for unions to take strike action, and also reduced the power of union leaders in negotiations. This was intended to increase flexibility and competitiveness in the labor market, but it was controversial at the time and is still a subject of debate today. 4. Economic growth. While there were certainly challenges and setbacks during Thatcher's time in office, the UK economy did experience significant growth during the 1980s, particularly in industries such as finance and technology. This growth was attributed in part to the government's economic policies, which helped to create a more favourable business environment. Overall, Thatcher's economic policies were designed to reduce the role of the state in the economy, increase competition and efficiency, and promote entrepreneurship and innovation. While there were certainly criticisms and controversies surrounding these policies, they had a significant impact on the British economy and society. Some text goes here. What were some of the key challenges and controversies that Thatcher faced during her time in office, such as the Falklands War and the miners' strike? Some text goes here. Margaret Thatcher faced a number of significant challenges and controversies during her time in office as Prime Minister of the United Kingdom. Here are some of the most notable. 1. The Falklands War. In 1982, Argentina invaded the Falkland Islands, a British overseas territory in the South Atlantic. Thatcher responded by sending a task force to retake the islands, which led to a brief but intense conflict. The war was controversial, both because of the loss of life on both sides and because of concerns about the UK's involvement in a colonial conflict. However, Many people credit Thatcher's leadership during the war with boosting her popularity and helping her win re-election in 1983. 2. The miners' strike. In 1984-85, the National Union of Mine Workers went on strike in protest against planned mine closures. The strike lasted for a year and was marked by violent clashes between miners and police. Thatcher was determined to defeat the strike, which she saw as a threat to her government's economic policies and to the power of trade unions more broadly. The strike was controversial, with many people arguing that it had a devastating impact on mining communities and contributed to the decline of the UK's industrial base. 3. The poll tax. In 1990, Thatcher introduced a new tax, known as the poll tax, which replaced the previous system of local property taxes. The poll tax was controversial because it was seen as unfair to lower-income households, who would have to pay the same amount as wealthier households. The tax was deeply unpopular, and there were widespread protests and riots against it. Thatcher's support for the poll tax was seen as a major factor in her eventual downfall as Prime Minister. 4. Europe. Thatcher had a complicated relationship with the European Union, which was then known as the European Economic Community. While she was initially in favour of the UK's membership in the EEC, she became increasingly critical of the organisation in the 1980s, particularly in relation to issues such as budget contributions and sovereignty. Her opposition to further European integration was a major factor in her eventual resignation as Prime Minister. Overall, these challenges and controversies highlight the complex and often divisive nature of Thatcher's leadership, as well as the significant social and political changes that occurred in the UK during her time in office. How did Thatcher's leadership style and personality shape her approach to governance, both domestically and internationally? Margaret Thatcher was known for her strong leadership style and forceful personality, which shaped her approach to governance both domestically and internationally. Here are some of the key ways in which her leadership style and personality impacted her approach to politics. 1. Assertiveness. Thatcher was famously assertive and confident, and she was not afraid to push her agenda forward aggressively, even in the face of opposition. This approach was reflected in her economic policies, which were aimed at reducing the role of the state in the economy and increasing competition and efficiency. Her assertiveness was also evident in her foreign policy, particularly during the Falklands War, when she was determined to protect British interests in the face of Argentine aggression. 2. Conviction. Thatcher was known for her strong convictions and her commitment to her principles, particularly in relation to free market economics and individual liberty. Her conviction and determination helped to push through significant changes in British society and economy during the 1980s, despite opposition from some quarters. 3. Leadership by example. Thatcher was also known for leading by example, and she was not afraid to take bold and sometimes controversial actions to demonstrate her commitment to her policies. For example, during the miners' strike, she refused to back down or compromise, even when faced with widespread protests and criticism. 4. International relations. Thatcher's leadership style also had a significant impact on her approach to international relations. She was known for her close relationship with U.S. President Ronald Reagan, and she played an important role in shaping the policies of the Western Alliance during the Cold War. Her forceful personality also helped her to negotiate effectively with other world leaders, such as Soviet leader Mikhail Gorbachev. Overall, Thatcher's leadership style and personality were marked by assertiveness, conviction, and a willingness to take bold action. While this approach won her many supporters, it also made her a polarizing figure, and her leadership style remains a subject of debate and controversy today. How did Thatcher's legacy continue to shape British politics and society after she left office, and what is her lasting impact on the world stage? Margaret Thatcher's legacy continued to shape British politics and society after she left office, and she also had a lasting impact on the world stage. Here are some of the key ways in which her legacy continues to be felt. 1. Economic policies. Thatcher's economic policies, which emphasized free market principles and reduced government intervention, had a lasting impact on the UK economy. Many of the industries that were privatized during her time in office have remained in private hands, and her emphasis on competition and efficiency has continued to shape economic policy in the UK. 2. Political philosophy. Thatcher's political philosophy, which emphasized individual liberty, personal responsibility, and a limited role for the state, has continued to influence British politics. Many members of the Conservative Party continue to see her as a key figure in the party's history and as a symbol of conservative values. 3. Women in politics. Thatcher's role as the first female Prime Minister of the UK has also had a lasting impact on women in politics. She paved the way for other female leaders in the UK, such as Theresa May and Nicola Sturgeon, and inspired women around the world to pursue political careers. 4. International relations. Thatcher's impact on international relations was also significant. Her close relationship with U.S. President Ronald Reagan helped to shape the policies of the Western Alliance during the Cold War, and her forceful personality and willingness to stand up to foreign powers earned her respect and admiration in some quarters. 5. Controversies. However, Thatcher's legacy is also marked by controversies and criticisms, particularly in relation to the impact of her economic policies on working-class communities and the role of the state in society. Her leadership style and personality were also polarizing, and she remains a divisive figure in British and global politics. Overall, Margaret Thatcher's legacy continues to be felt in many areas of British and global politics and society, and her impact as a pioneering female leader and a symbol of conservative values remains significant. However, her legacy is also marked by controversies and criticisms, and her leadership style and policies remain the subject of debate and analysis. Some text goes here. What is the Iron Lady's legacy in terms of women's rights and gender equality, and how did she pave the way for other female leaders? Some text goes here. Margaret Thatcher's legacy in terms of women's rights and gender equality is complex and contested. On the one hand, her role as the first female Prime Minister of the United Kingdom was a significant achievement for women's representation in politics. She broke through a major barrier and paved the way for other women to follow in her footsteps. However, Thatcher was not particularly outspoken on feminist issues and did not prioritize policies aimed at promoting gender equality. In fact, during her time in office, women's employment rights were weakened in some respects, particularly in relation to equal pay and workplace discrimination. Despite this, Thatcher's leadership style and political philosophy did have a significant impact on the role of women in politics and society. By being a strong and assertive leader, she challenged traditional gender roles and stereotypes, and helped to normalize the idea of women in positions of power. Her example inspired other women to pursue political careers and to challenge gender barriers in other fields. Thatcher's legacy as a female leader also helped to reshape perceptions of what it means to be a woman in power. Her forceful personality and commitment to conservative values challenged stereotypes of women as weak or passive, and helped to create a new model of female leadership that emphasized strength, assertiveness, and conviction. Overall, while Thatcher's legacy in terms of women's rights and gender equality is not without controversy, her example as a pioneering female leader has had a lasting impact on politics and society, and continues to inspire women around the world to break through gender barriers and pursue positions of power and influence. Some text goes here. How did Thatcher's relationship with other world leaders, such as Ronald Reagan and Mikhail Gorbachev, shape the global political landscape of the 1980s? Some text goes here. Margaret Thatcher's relationships with other world leaders, particularly Ronald Reagan and Mikhail Gorbachev, had a significant impact on the global political landscape of the 1980s. Here are some of the key ways in which these relationships shaped international politics. 1. Reagan-Thatcher alliance. Thatcher had a close relationship with U.S. President Ronald Reagan, and the two leaders shared a commitment to free market economics and a strong defense policy. Their close alliance helped to shape the policies of the Western Alliance during the Cold War, and helped to bring about the end of the Soviet Union. 2. Cold War diplomacy. What were some of the criticisms of Thatcher's policies and leadership style, and how did she respond to these criticisms during her time in office? Margaret Thatcher's policies and leadership style were controversial and polarizing, and she faced a number of criticisms during her time in office. Here are some of the key criticisms, and how she responded to them. 1. Economic policies. Thatcher's economic policies, which emphasized free market principles and reduced government intervention, were criticized for their impact on working-class communities and for exacerbating inequality. Some critics argued that her policies contributed to rising unemployment, poverty, and social unrest. Thatcher defended her economic policies by arguing that they were necessary to stimulate growth and competitiveness, and that they would ultimately benefit everyone in society. 2. Trade union reform. Thatcher's reforms to trade unions were controversial, and some critics argued that they eroded workers' rights and contributed to a decline in working conditions. Thatcher argued that the reforms were necessary to increase flexibility and competitiveness in the labor market, and to reduce the power of union leaders in negotiations. 3. Personality and leadership style. Thatcher's personality and leadership style were also criticized by some, who saw her as arrogant, divisive, and uncompromising. Critics argued that she was too focused on pursuing her own agenda and too dismissive of other viewpoints. Thatcher defended her leadership style by arguing that strong leadership was necessary to enact bold changes and to promote British interests on the world stage. 4. Foreign policy. Thatcher's foreign policy was also criticized, particularly in relation to her support for U.S. military interventions in countries such as Grenada and Libya. Critics argued that her support for these interventions was inconsistent with her commitment to international law and diplomacy. Thatcher defended her foreign policy by arguing that it was necessary to protect British interests and to promote democracy and freedom around the world. Overall, Thatcher responded to her criticisms by defending her policies and leadership style as necessary and effective, and by emphasizing her commitment to conservative values and to the interests of the British people. While she faced significant opposition and controversy during her time in office, she remained a resolute and forceful leader who was unafraid to pursue her agenda in the face of opposition. Some text goes here. How did Thatcher's vision of Britain's role in the world differ from that of previous prime ministers, and how did this shape her foreign policy agenda? Some text goes here. Margaret Thatcher's vision of Britain's role in the world differed significantly from that of previous prime ministers, and this had a major impact on her foreign policy agenda. Here are some of the key ways in which her vision differed from that of her predecessors. 1. National sovereignty. Thatcher was committed to protecting Britain's national sovereignty and promoting its interests on the world stage. She was skeptical of European integration and was wary of any policies or agreements that might erode Britain's independence or dilute its influence. This contrasted with the more internationalist approach of some previous prime ministers, who saw Britain's role as part of a wider global community. 2. Economic liberalism. Thatcher was a strong advocate of free market economics and believed that economic liberalization and competition were essential to Britain's success in the world. She saw Britain as a dynamic and innovative economy that could compete with the best in the world, and she sought to promote this vision through policies such as privatization and deregulation. 3. Defense and security. Thatcher saw defense and security as essential to Britain's role in the world, and she was committed to maintaining a strong military presence and to supporting Western alliances such as NATO. She believed that Britain had a duty to support its allies and to defend Western values and interests. 4. Anti-communism. Thatcher was a staunch anti-communist and saw the Soviet Union as a major threat to Western interests and values. She played a key role in promoting Western policies that challenged Soviet expansionism, and she worked closely with U.S. President Ronald Reagan to promote policies such as the Strategic Defense Initiative. Overall, Thatcher's vision of Britain's role in the world was marked by a strong commitment to national sovereignty, free market economics, defense and security, and anti-communism. These priorities shaped her foreign policy agenda and helped to establish her as a forceful and influential leader on the world stage. Some text goes here. What lessons can be learned from Thatcher's career and leadership style? both for future leaders and for the broader public? Some text goes here. Margaret Thatcher's career and leadership style offer a number of lessons that can be applied to future leaders and to the broader public. Here are some of the key lessons. 1. Leadership by conviction. Thatcher's leadership style was marked by a strong sense of conviction and a willingness to stand up for her beliefs, even in the face of opposition. This example highlights the importance of leadership by conviction, and the power of bold ideas and strong leadership to drive change. 2. Political courage. Thatcher's career was marked by a willingness to take risks and to pursue policies that were controversial and unpopular. This example highlights the importance of political courage and the need for leaders who are willing to take bold action, even in the face of adversity. 3. Forceful personality. Thatcher's forceful personality and assertive leadership style helped to establish her as a powerful and influential leader on the world stage. This example highlights the importance of personality and leadership style in shaping perceptions of leaders and their ability to drive change. 4. Importance of communication. Thatcher was a skilled communicator, and she used her rhetorical talents to great effect in promoting her policies and ideas. This example highlights the importance of communication in leadership and the power of effective communication to inspire and mobilize people. 5. Debating ideas. Thatcher was known for her intellectual rigor and her willingness to engage in debate and discussion with her opponents. This example highlights the importance of debating ideas and the need for leaders who are able to engage in thoughtful and constructive dialogue with people who hold different viewpoints. Overall, Thatcher's career and leadership style offer a number of important lessons for future leaders and for the broader public, including the importance of leadership by conviction, political courage, forceful personality, effective communication, and engaging in debate and discussion. Some text goes here. How did Thatcher's policies affect the working class and marginalised communities in the UK, and what was the public perception of her policies during her time in office? Some text goes here. Thatcher's policies had a significant impact on working-class and marginalised communities in the UK, and they remain a subject of controversy and debate to this day. Here are some of the key ways in which her policies affected these communities. 1. Economic policies. Thatcher's economic policies, which emphasised free market principles and reduced government intervention, had a significant impact on working-class communities. The privatization of industries such as steel and coal resulted in job losses and economic hardship for many people in these industries, and her cuts to social programs and welfare support were seen as exacerbating inequality and poverty. 2. Trade union reform. Thatcher's reforms to trade unions were also controversial, and they were seen by many as an attack on workers' rights and bargaining power. The miners' strike, in particular, was a key moment in this conflict, and it had a significant impact on working-class communities. 3. Social issues. Thatcher's policies on social issues, such as education and healthcare, were also controversial. Her support for selective education and her emphasis on private healthcare were seen by many as a threat to the provision of public services and as contributing to social inequality. 4. Public perception. Thatcher's policies were controversial and polarizing, and they generated significant opposition and protests. While she had her supporters, particularly among conservative and business circles, her policies were widely criticized by the left and by many working-class and marginalized communities. Overall, Thatcher's policies had a significant impact on working-class and marginalized communities in the UK, and they remain a subject of controversy and debate. While some argue that her policies were necessary to stimulate economic growth and promote competitiveness, others argue that they contributed to rising inequality and poverty, and that they eroded workers' rights and bargaining power. The public perception of her policies during her time in office was mixed, and they continue to be a contentious issue in British politics and society. Some text goes here. What were some of the major legislative reforms that Thatcher introduced during her time as Prime Minister, such as the Education Reform Act and the Housing Act, and how did they impact British society? Some text goes here. During her time as Prime Minister, Margaret Thatcher introduced a number of major legislative reforms that had a significant impact on British society. Here are some of the key reforms and their impacts. 1. Education Reform Act. The Education Reform Act of 1988 introduced major changes to the education system in the UK. It introduced a national curriculum, gave parents more choice over which school their children attended, and established a system of standardized testing. The impact of these changes has been widely debated, with some arguing that they improved standards and promoted accountability, while others argue that they contributed to a culture of standardized testing and competition between schools. 2. Housing Act. The Housing Act of 1980 introduced the Right to Buy scheme, which allowed council tenants to purchase their homes at a discounted price. This policy was aimed at promoting home ownership and reducing the role of the state in the housing market. The impact of this policy has been mixed, with some arguing that it has helped to create a generation of homeowners and promoted personal responsibility, while others argue that it has contributed to rising house prices and reduced the availability of affordable housing. 3. Trade Union Reform. The Trade Union Reform and Employment Rights Act of 1993 introduced further reforms to trade unions, including tighter restrictions on industrial action and changes to the rights of union members. The impact of these changes has been controversial, with some arguing that they have contributed to a decline in union membership and bargaining power, while others argue that they have promoted greater stability and efficiency in the labor market. 4. Local Government Reform. The Local Government Finance Act of 1988 introduced major changes to the way that local authorities were funded and managed. It abolished the system of rates and introduced the community charge, or poll tax, which was widely criticized for its regressive nature and its impact on low-income households. The policy contributed to a significant political backlash against the government and helped to contribute to Thatcher's eventual downfall. Overall, Thatcher's legislative reforms had a significant impact on British society and continue to shape the political and social landscape of the country today. While some of her policies have been praised for promoting personal responsibility and promoting economic growth, others have been criticized for exacerbating inequality and eroding workers' rights and bargaining power. The legacy of her policies remains a subject of ongoing debate and analysis in British politics and society. Some text goes here. How did Thatcher navigate the complex relationships between the UK and the European Union, and what was her overall stance on European integration? Some text goes here. Margaret Thatcher's stance on European integration was complex and evolving, and she faced a number of challenges and controversies in her relationship with the European Union, EU. Here are some of the key ways in which she navigated this relationship. 1. Euroscepticism. Thatcher was known for her skepticism of the EU and its institutions, and she saw the project of European integration as a threat to British sovereignty and independence. She was particularly critical of efforts to create a closer political union and to transfer powers from national governments to Brussels. 2. Negotiation and diplomacy. Despite her skepticism of the EU, Thatcher recognized the importance of maintaining a constructive relationship with European leaders and of promoting British interests within the EU. She engaged in a number of negotiations and diplomatic efforts to promote her vision of a more flexible and decentralized European Union, and to protect British interests in areas such as trade and agriculture. 3. Controversies and challenges. Thatcher's relationship with the EU was not without controversy, and she faced a number of challenges and disagreements with other European leaders. Her opposition to the creation of the euro currency and her resistance to the Maastricht Treaty, which established the framework for European political and economic integration, were particularly contentious. 4. Impact on British politics. Thatcher's stance on European integration had a significant impact on British politics, and it contributed to the ongoing debate over Britain's role in Europe. Her opposition to the EU was influential in shaping the rise of Euroscepticism in the Conservative Party and in British politics more broadly. Overall, Thatcher's relationship with the EU was marked by a complex mix of skepticism, negotiation, and controversy. While she recognized the importance of maintaining a constructive relationship with European leaders and of promoting British interests within the EU, She remained committed to protecting British sovereignty and independence, and to resisting efforts to create a more centralised and integrated European Union.